When you stand in front of the mirror, there's nowhere to hide. The mirror doesn't care about the roles you play for the world, the titles you carry, or the masks you've learned to wear so well. It's not interested in how many people think you're confident or how well you've mastered the art of pretending you're fine. It will reflect back to you the truth, even if you've been running from it for years. And for some people, that truth is hard to look at. That's why so many avoid the mirror altogether or glance at it quickly. Focusing on a flaw here or a distraction there, but never really locking eyes with the person staring back. Because when you truly look into your own eyes, you start to see the gap between the life you're living and the life you were designed to live. You see the dreams you've buried, the promises you've broken to yourself, and the power you've been afraid to claim. The mirror doesn't sugarcoat it. It won't tell you you're living in alignment if you're not. It won't nod along with the excuses you've rehearsed. And that's exactly why it's so powerful. The moment you begin facing yourself daily, really facing yourself, is the moment you take back your power from the world and hand it to the one person who can truly change your life, you. In that glass, you're confronted with every truth you've been avoiding. And while that can be uncomfortable, it's the discomfort that cracks you open to transformation. You can't shift what you refuse to see. If you've been hiding behind a smile while your heart is heavy, the mirror will call you on it. If you've been downplaying your talents out of fear of judgment, the mirror will remind you of the greatness still pulsing inside you. There's a deep, almost sacred quality to standing in front of your reflection and saying, "This is me. This is where I am, and I'm ready to do the work." You stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to grow. You stop outsourcing your self-awareness to the opinions of others. You stop pretending you're okay with less than what you deserve. The mirror shows you the raw material of your life, the unpolished, unfiltered version of you. And it whispers, "This is enough to start. This is enough to win." But you have to be willing to see it. At first, it might feel awkward. You might struggle to hold your own gaze because it's too intimate, too honest, too exposing. But that's the very reason you need to keep coming back. Every day, you strip away another layer of doubt, fear, and shame. Every day, you get closer to seeing yourself not as the sum of your past mistakes, but as the architect of your future victories. And the more you show up in that mirror, the more you start to believe the person looking back at you deserves your best effort, your highest commitment, your fiercest love. The mirror never lies, but it can become your greatest ally. It will tell you when you're shrinking, but it will also tell you when you're standing tall. It will reflect the weariness in your eyes after a hard season, but it will also reflect the fire that's still there, the spark that hardship couldn't extinguish. It will remind you of your humanity, but also of your divinity. When you stand there long enough, you start to recognize that you're not just looking at a body or a face or a set of features. You're looking at a soul that survived, fought, and risen again. And this is where the real change begins. When you stop seeing the mirror as a judge and start seeing it as a witness to your growth, a witness to your resilience, a witness to the promises you're making and keeping with yourself. Every day you show up in front of it, you strengthen that unbreakable bond between who you are now and who you're becoming. And the more you do it, the more you realize that this glass is not just showing you what is, it's showing you what's possible. If you keep avoiding it, you keep avoiding you. And if you avoid you, you avoid the one relationship that defines every other relationship in your life. But if you dare to look, really look, you'll find truth. And truth, no matter how sharp at first, will always set you free. When you stand in front of the mirror and speak life into yourself, you're doing more than practicing positive thinking. You're stepping into a space where healing can finally happen. Most people carry wounds they've never talked about. Some from childhood, some from heartbreak, some from seasons of failure or rejection. These wounds may not bleed, but they still ache. They show up in the way you hesitate before saying yes to an opportunity. They show up in the way you doubt your worth before you've even tried. They show up in the way you accept less than you deserve because a part of you is still trying to prove you're lovable. Mirror work creates a sacred moment where you can talk to the part of yourself that's been silently carrying those hurts. And for the first time, that part of you hears a voice of compassion instead of criticism. It might feel strange at first to look at yourself and say words like, I love you, or I forgive you. You might even want to look away. But if you stay there long enough, something begins to soften. You start to realize that some of the pain you've been holding on to isn't even yours. It's old words from someone else that you took as truth. Maybe it was the teacher who told you you'd never amount to anything, the parent who couldn't love you the way you needed, or the partner who broke you down instead of building you up. Their voices became the ones you repeated in your own head without even knowing it. Mirror work interrupts that cycle. It allows you to replace those voices with your own, and your voice is the one that matters most. Every time you speak affirmations into the mirror, you are essentially stitching up those inner wounds. Words are medicine when they're chosen with intention. Just like a physical cut needs care and attention to heal, your emotional and spiritual wounds need consistent doses of love, encouragement, and truth. And because the mirror forces you to look directly at yourself while you speak those words, the message sinks deeper. It's one thing to think, I'm worthy. It's another to look yourself in the eyes and declare it with conviction. That's when your inner self starts to believe it's possible to live without the pain defining you. Some of your wounds might not disappear overnight. Healing is not about erasing the past. It's about changing your relationship with it. Mirror work allows you to acknowledge what happened without letting it keep you hostage. It gives you the power to say, yes, I've been hurt. Yes, I've been through storms, but I'm still here and I still choose me. This is not about pretending the pain never existed. It's about looking in your own eyes and realizing that you survived it, that you're still standing, that you can build something beautiful from the pieces that were once broken. Over time, the mirror becomes a safe space, almost like a trusted friend who listens without judgment. You begin to anticipate those moments with yourself because you know you'll walk away feeling lighter, stronger, and more grounded. You start to see your reflection not as a reminder of flaws or failures, but as evidence of resilience. And every time you choose to stand there, even on days you don't feel like it, you're sending a message to your soul. You matter enough for me to show up for you. Healing the silent wounds isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as the daily discipline of standing in the mirror and telling yourself truths you were never told. Sometimes it's as quiet as whispering, I forgive you, until you finally mean it. Sometimes it's just looking at yourself and letting tears fall because you've spent too many years pretending you didn't hurt. The mirror gives you permission to feel it all and release it piece by piece. When you commit to this process, you'll start to notice shifts. You'll carry yourself differently. You'll speak to yourself with more patience. You'll set boundaries with more confidence. And most importantly, you'll begin to trust yourself again. The wounds may have shaped you, but they do not have to define you. Mirror work helps you prove to yourself that healing is possible, not because the world said so, but because you decided to stand there and speak it into existence. And that decision, repeated day after day, can change everything. For so many years, the mirror has been used as a tool for judgment. People walk past it, stop for a moment, and immediately begin a silent audit of what's wrong. The hair that isn't sitting right. The skin that doesn't look perfect. The body that doesn't match an unrealistic picture painted by magazines, social media, and television. And without even realizing it, this daily habit of self-criticism becomes normal. You see yourself through a lens of what's missing instead of what's present, what's wrong instead of what's right. Mirror work flips that habit on its head. Instead of using the mirror to find reasons to be disappointed in yourself, you begin to use it as a space to practice compassion. At first, this shift feels almost unnatural. You've trained your mind for so long to scan for flaws that it takes a conscious effort to say, I'm going to look for what's beautiful instead. But as you stand there, you start noticing things you've ignored. The way your eyes light up when you smile, the strength in your shoulders that carried you through difficult seasons, the curve of your mouth that has spoken words of love, encouragement, and truth into the lives of others. You begin to see evidence of your value in places you once dismissed. And the more you train yourself to look for it, the more it appears. Self-compassion doesn't mean you never want to grow or improve. It means you stop tearing yourself apart in the process. It means you understand that you can strive for better while still loving yourself right now, exactly as you are. Mirror work helps you practice that balance. Each time you face your reflection, you're rewriting the story you've been telling yourself. Instead of, I'm not enough yet, you start saying, I am enough now, and I'm becoming even more. That small but powerful change in language shifts how you feel about yourself, how you carry yourself, and even how you allow others to treat you. Over time, you'll start to notice that the voice in your head changes. The same voice that used to say, you're to this, or you're not enough of that, will begin to sound more like a supportive friend. And that matters because the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. When you're harsh and critical with yourself, you often accept the same treatment from others. When you're kind and compassionate with yourself, you raise the standard for how people are allowed to speak to and treat you. Another transformation happens when you start recognizing that so-called flaws tell a story. The lines on your face are evidence of laughter and tears of moments lived fully. The scar on your body might carry the memory of a battle you survived. The features you once judged might be the very ones that make you unique. Mirror work helps you reclaim these parts of yourself and see them not as reasons for shame, but as badges of honor. The shift from self-criticism to self-compassion doesn't happen in one day. Some mornings you'll look in the mirror and the old thoughts will try to creep back in. That's okay. The work is in catching those thoughts and replacing them with truth. It's in saying, I see you trying to tear me down, but I choose to speak life instead. The more you practice, the stronger that compassionate voice becomes until it's your default setting. And here's the beauty of it. When you start treating yourself with compassion, you begin to show up in the world with more openness, patience, and love for others. You stop projecting your insecurities onto them. You stop comparing yourself to them. You stop needing to prove your worth through competition or validation. You stand rooted in the truth that you are worthy and that worth is not up for debate. The mirror becomes your training ground for this truth. Every time you stand there, you're not just changing how you see your reflection. You're changing how you see yourself. And when you can look in the mirror without immediately picking yourself apart, when you can meet your own gaze with gentleness instead of judgment, you have already begun one of the most powerful transformations a person can experience. You've shifted from being your own worst critic to being your own best ally. That's when the world around you starts to change too, because you're living from a place of self-love instead of self-doubt. And that more than anything is a foundation you can build a life on. When you stand in front of the mirror and begin to speak to yourself with power, something shifts. For most of your life, you've probably been conditioned to wait for encouragement from someone else. A parent, a friend, a teacher, a boss, a partner. You've been taught to measure your worth based on applause, approval, or acknowledgement from others. But the truth is, when those voices go silent, when there's no one cheering for you, you can be left feeling empty, unmotivated, and unseen. Mirror work changes that because it teaches you to be your own source of motivation. It helps you become the coach you've always needed, the one who's available at 6 a.m. when you wake up tired, at midnight when you feel defeated, and in every moment in between. The mirror becomes your training ground for speaking victory into your life before you even see it in the world around you. You might not have the results yet, but when you stand there and say, I am capable, I am strong, I am prepared, I am worthy, you begin to program your mind to move in alignment with those truths. You stop waiting for life to give you evidence before you believe in yourself, and you start creating that evidence through your actions. That's how high achievers operate. They declare who they are, then they go out and live it. And the mirror is where you practice that declaration until it feels as natural as breathing. This is not about empty, feel-good words. This is about choosing language that lifts you, pushes you, and calls you into action. Your inner coach doesn't just tell you what you want to hear. It reminds you of what you're capable of when you've forgotten. It challenges you when you're tempted to play small. It tells you to get back up when you fall, not because the fall didn't hurt, but because your dream is worth more than your comfort. And when you practice that in the mirror, you carry it into every other area of your life. Think about athletes before a big game. They don't just stretch their muscles, they prepare their minds. They visualize themselves winning. They hear their coach's voice telling them they're ready, and they step onto the field with conviction. Mirror work gives you the same advantage, except the coach is you. And the more you coach yourself in that mirror, the more you believe the voice you're hearing, because it's coming from the one person who knows you best. You know the battles you've fought. You know the obstacles you've overcome. You know the times you kept going when no one else was watching. That means your encouragement isn't generic, it's deeply personal, tailored to your journey, and rooted in truth. There will be days when your energy is low, when you don't feel like showing up, when your goals feel too far away. Those are the days mirror work becomes even more essential. On those days, the coach in you needs to be louder than the critic in you. You need to look yourself in the eye and say, I know you're tired, but we're not stopping. I know you're scared, but we're still moving. I know it's hard, but you've done hard things before and you'll do them again. And as you speak, you'll feel that fire reignite. You'll remember that you're not just surviving, you're building something. The beauty of activating your inner coach is that it builds resilience. You stop depending on external motivation, which is unpredictable and inconsistent, and you start cultivating internal motivation, which you can call on anytime. And as that voice inside you grows stronger, you'll notice that you begin to lead yourself with greater confidence. You'll start taking bigger risks because you trust yourself to handle the outcome. You'll start pursuing opportunities because you've trained yourself to believe you're ready. even before you feel ready. In time, you'll realize that the mirror is not just a place to see your reflection. It's a place to sharpen your mindset, to fuel your belief, and to prepare yourself for whatever life throws your way. It's where you turn self-doubt into self-discipline, hesitation into boldness, and fear into fuel. And the more you activate that inner coach, the more you'll notice that you don't just survive challenges. You rise through them because you've learned to be the loudest, strongest, and most consistent voice in your own life. And once you have that, you are unstoppable. When you stand in front of the mirror and hold your own gaze, there is a power in that moment that most people underestimate. Eye contact with yourself can feel uncomfortable at first because it's rare. In daily life, you make eye contact with strangers, coworkers, family, and friends, but when was the last time you truly looked into your own eyes? Not just to check your appearance, but to connect with yourself. That level of connection does something to you. It strips away the space you've been hiding in, the little corner in your mind where you've been keeping your dreams safely out of reach because you were too afraid to pursue them. The mirror doesn't let you run. It doesn't let you dodge the truth. When you stare into your own eyes and speak your dreams aloud, you hear the sound of your own voice committing to them. And suddenly fear starts to lose its grip. Fear thrives in shadows. It loves the quiet corners where you avoid confrontation with your true desires. It feeds on hesitation and the habit of telling yourself one day instead of today. But the moment you start looking yourself in the eyes and declaring what you want, you're dragging those dreams out into the light. You're holding yourself accountable. You can't unhear yourself saying, I will start my business. I will write my book. I will heal my body. I will love without fear. Those words are now attached to a face you see every single day, and that connection forces action. This process doesn't just inspire you. It challenges you. There will be days when you feel like quitting, days when the obstacles feel too heavy, and days when you wonder if you're even capable. But the mirror will not let you hide from the truth that you are the only one who can make it happen. On those days, you'll look into your own eyes and see a reflection of someone who has already survived storms, who has already endured and kept going. That image will remind you that you've faced fear before and walked right through it. And here's something powerful. Fear and courage are not opposites. They often exist in the same space, but the difference is which one you feed. Mirror work teaches you to feed courage. Every time you stare yourself down and declare your vision, you're training your mind to associate your reflection with bravery instead of doubt. It becomes a habit to see yourself as someone who follows through, even when the fear is still whispering in the background. Over time, those declarations in the mirror start to feel less like wishful thinking and more like inevitable truths. You begin to walk differently because you've rehearsed your victory in the mirror. You've already spoken it, believed it, and now you're living into it. That shift is subtle but life changing. fear starts to lose its ability to paralyze you because you've made a daily practice of confronting it head on. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I fly? The act of looking yourself in the eyes also deepens your commitment to your own word. If you tell yourself something in the mirror and then break that promise, you feel it. There's an integrity that develops between your reflection and your reality. You start keeping promises to yourself, not because anyone else is watching, but because you're watching. That level of accountability is rare and powerful. It builds trust within yourself, and trust is the foundation of confidence. And with that confidence, you begin to take bolder steps. You sign up for the class you've been avoiding. You pitch the idea you've been sitting on. You apply for the job you thought was out of reach. You speak up in the room instead of shrinking in the corner. Every step reinforces the identity you've been building in the mirror. The identity of someone who moves toward their dreams instead of away from them. Eventually, the mirror is no longer just a surface reflecting your face. It becomes a place where you meet the most determined, courageous, and unstoppable version of yourself. It becomes a space where fear doesn't get the final say. And when fear no longer controls you, you're free, not just to dream, but to do, to create, to live fully. You're free to walk into your own life with a fierceness that says, I am not running from myself anymore. I am running toward the life I was meant to live. And that is how mirror work turns fear into fierceness. One gaze, one declaration, and one bold step at a time. Who you believe yourself to be shapes every single decision you make. It influences the risks you take, the opportunities you reach for, the people you allow in your life, and even the boundaries you set. The problem is, most people are living out an identity that was written for them by someone else. Maybe it was shaped by what your parents told you growing up. Maybe it came from the labels a teacher, boss, or even a bully placed on you. Maybe it's been defined by the mistakes you've made or the circumstances you were born into. Without even realizing it, you start to carry those definitions as if they're your own. And you live inside a box you didn't even build. Mirror work gives you the chance to tear down that box and create a new one. One that's big enough to hold the life you truly want. When you look into the mirror and speak new truths over yourself, you are rewriting your self-identity in real time. You're interrupting the old story and replacing it with a new narrative. Instead of saying, I'm not smart enough, you declare, I am resourceful and capable of learning anything I need to succeed. Instead of believing, I'm unlucky in love, you say, I am worthy of healthy, lasting love, and I welcome it into my life. Instead of holding on to, I'll never be successful, you replace it with, I am building a life of purpose, abundance, and fulfillment. These statements might feel uncomfortable at first because they go against the identity you've been living with, but that's exactly why they're necessary. Identity is powerful because your brain works to keep you consistent with who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who's always broke, you'll subconsciously make decisions that keep you in financial struggle. If you see yourself as someone who's shy and awkward, you'll avoid situations where you might shine. But the moment you start changing the way you see yourself, your actions begin to change too. Mirror work accelerates this process because it forces you to anchor those new beliefs, not just in your mind, but in your body, your voice, and your emotions. There's a unique power in looking at your own reflection while speaking your identity out loud. You're not just thinking it, you're embodying it. You see your own eyes as you declare, I am enough. I am powerful. I am ready. You hear your own voice carrying those words. You feel the emotion behind them. That combination creates a deep level of belief that no amount of silent thinking can match. It's like planting a seed and watering it every single day until it grows into something unshakable. And as your identity shifts, so does your reality. You start to make choices that align with the new version of you. You begin to set boundaries because you believe you're worth protecting. You go after opportunities you once thought were too big because you see yourself as someone capable of handling them. You surround yourself with people who reflect your new level of self-respect instead of those who reinforce your old limitations. Life begins to respond to who you're becoming, not just who you've been. It's important to understand that rewriting your self-identity doesn't mean you ignore your past. It means you refuse to let your past dictate your future. You take the lessons from what you've been through, but you no longer allow them to define you. The person you see in the mirror is not the same person who made those mistakes, faced those struggles, or endured those setbacks. You're evolving, and your identity has to evolve with you. Some days, this work will feel natural and empowering. Other days, it will feel like you're forcing yourself to believe something that doesn't quite fit yet. That's okay. Growth often feels awkward before it feels authentic. The key is consistency. The more you repeat these new truths in the mirror, the more natural they become until one day you realize you're no longer just saying them. You're living them. Eventually, you'll look in the mirror and see a person who is no longer trapped by the limits of old labels. You'll see someone who owns their worth, who sets the tone for how others treat them, who takes bold action because they know who they are. And that's the gift of mirror work. It gives you the authority to define yourself on your own terms, in your own voice, and with your own power. Once you have that, you're no longer living by the identity the world handed you. You're living by the identity you've chosen, and that choice will change everything. There is something incredibly freeing about realizing that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. If you speak to yourself with kindness, you naturally expect kindness from others. If you respect yourself, you naturally attract respect. But if you criticize yourself harshly, if you doubt your worth, if you constantly point out your flaws, you unintentionally give others permission to treat you the same way. Mirror work becomes the training ground for building a deep, unshakable love for yourself. And that love begins to influence everything: your career, your friendships, your romantic relationships, and even the way you respond to life's challenges. When you stand in front of the mirror and look yourself in the eyes with compassion, you begin to rewrite the way you see yourself. Maybe you've been in the habit of noticing only what's wrong, the wrinkles, the weight, the tiredness, the mistakes you made last week or even years ago. Mirror work challenges that habit by asking you to notice what's right. It asks you to acknowledge your strengths, your progress, your resilience, and the parts of you that have kept going through storms that could have broken you. This isn't about arrogance. It's about balance. For years, you may have been quick to criticize yourself, but slow to celebrate yourself. Mirror work flips that script. As you practice loving yourself in the mirror, you begin to feel safer in your own presence. That safety is important because it means you stop abandoning yourself when things get hard. Many people turn against themselves in moments of struggle. They pile on blame, shame, or judgment. But when you've trained yourself to stand in front of your reflection and speak love, you create a habit of standing with yourself instead of against yourself. This is the foundation of emotional resilience. You stop relying solely on external validation because you know how to generate it internally right there in that mirror. And the more you nurture that self-love, the higher your standards become, not out of entitlement, but out of self-respect. You begin to realize that the way others treat you is a reflection of what you believe you deserve. If you believe you are worthy of honesty, kindness, and respect, you naturally draw boundaries that protect those values. If someone crosses those boundaries, you no longer hesitate to speak up because you've been practicing honoring yourself in the mirror every single day. You've built the muscle of saying, I matter. My needs matter. My dreams matter. This self-love also changes the way you pursue your goals. When you believe in your worth, you stop chasing achievements as a way to prove yourself. Instead, you pursue them because you know you are capable, deserving, and equipped. You no longer tie your value to the outcome. You carry your value into the outcome. That shift is huge because it means setbacks no longer crush your sense of self. They simply become lessons on the way to something greater. Mirror work also teaches you forgiveness, the kind that starts with yourself. When you look into your own eyes day after day, you can't avoid the truth that you've made mistakes. But instead of letting those mistakes define you, you learn to speak to yourself with grace. You start saying, yes, I messed up, but I am still worthy of love. I am still growing, and I am still enough. That forgiveness lightens your heart, and it makes it easier to extend the same grace to others without losing your boundaries. Over time, this daily practice of self-love turns into a quiet, steady confidence. You no longer need to be the loudest in the room to feel powerful. You no longer seek constant approval because you've already given it to yourself. People around you begin to notice the difference. They see the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you no longer tolerate what doesn't serve you. That's the ripple effect of mirror work. One day, you'll stand in front of that mirror and realize you're not just reciting affirmations anymore. You believe them. You'll see a person who is whole, not because they're perfect, but because they've learned to love themselves through every imperfect moment. And when you walk out into the world carrying that kind of love, you inspire others to do the same. Not because you told them to, but because you showed them what it looks like. That is the quiet, transformative power of mirror work. It teaches you to love yourself so deeply that the world can't help but respond in kind.